We have a African proverb that we like to use here, and the motto is, "Until the lion tells his story, tales of the hunt will always glorify the hunter."
Hello and welcome to Showed Up, the storytelling project that celebrates independent music venues and theaters, the communities they reside in, and the people who keep them running. This special episode features the historic Lyric Theater, a venue whose story is intrinsically linked with the creation of Miami itself. The Lyric Theater was preserved, restored, and currently maintained by the Black Archives History and Research Center of South Florida. I had the honor of sitting down with Kamila Pritchett, the organization's executive director. And in this interview, Kamila discusses the Lyric Theater's origins, its home neighborhood of Overtown, the importance of preserving history, and much more. Thanks for listening, and I hope you enjoy the show.
The Lyric Theater is the oldest legitimate theater in Miami. In 1913, Black businessman by the name of Jeter Walker, who was from Quitman, Georgia, came down just like many other people. This was a new city. People were moving here. There were business opportunities. And this gentleman was a well-traveled man. You know, he'd gone to Europe. He'd seen the opulent opera houses there and performance venues. And because he was familiar with Overtown, he felt like Overtown needed a space like that that could be kind of the center of the community. So he came here and he built the Lyric Theater in 1913. And throughout the years, there were some performances here, although it is a misconception. A lot of times people mention, you know, the popular performers such as Sam Cooke, Aretha Franklin. These are people who performed in Overtown. This strip of 2nd Avenue was stacked with clubs and theaters. There was 2 or 3 or 4 other theaters just right next door. So a lot of those performances happened at the nightclubs and the other venues in the area. Overtown is a city that has the footprint that goes all the way back to 1896. In the early days, Henry Flagler was the person who was of power in this area, and he was for the incorporation of the city of Miami. A lot of people were not on board with that. So what they did was they'd asked for a group of men working to build the city of Miami to report down to the voting location. A third of the signatures that are on this incorporation document were Black men. The vote could not have even happened if it were not for those who signed their names to the incorporation registry. So let's be clear. The city of Miami literally would not exist without Black men. So in those days, in metropolitan cities, they had areas that were designated as the Central Negro District. So in the earlier days of Overtown, it was called Colored Town. And Colored Town was the Black Mecca. Because this was the only area where Blacks in Miami could live, you had Black blue-collar workers that were living in the same street as your Black doctors, Black lawyers, Black businessmen. You would patronize the businesses in your community, which would add the sustainability for your community's economy. The Lyric Theater was used as a community gathering space. This is where they would discuss Black issues. It had been used as a vaudeville theater. Around the late 1950s, it became a church for a little bit over a decade, and then the area started to decline. I-95 was a strategically planned highway. It did not make its way directly through the main artery of this Black neighborhood by accident. It dissected an economically stable and self-sustaining community. When 95 came through, there was like 20,000 people who were then displaced. So all of those people who had to move just because the construction caused their house to be demolished. So as those people leave, so does the economic generation that they created. Then you start to see boarded up buildings. There's no money circulating within the community, then that brings more space for the negative element to come in. You know, you're not united as a fist anymore. Everybody's spread out. And so the majority of the people who are left behind, if they don't have the resources to be able to make some movement happen, then the rest of Miami turns its eye. Only thing they have to say about Overtown is don't go there. And this is something that was perpetuated after 95. We're talking about now, we're going into the 80s. Pretty much everything around was starting to be either knocked down to make space for parking or, you know, new venues. And the Lyric Theater was still somehow standing. Dr. Fields, who at this point by 1988 had already started the Black Archives, she discovered the Lyric Theater was still savable, and she was able to have it placed on the National Register for Historic Places, which happened in 1989. The Black Archives is an organization that was founded in 1977 by Dr. Dorothy Jenkins Fields. At the time of the organization's incorporation, Dr. Fields was working as a librarian, and she wanted to put together a display for her students that would talk about Miami's Black history. So she called the main library and she asked what kind of things that they have that perhaps she could use. And the woman at the main library told her that she couldn't find anything, and I guess those people don't care enough about their history to preserve it. She said all she could find was obituaries. Dr. Fields said if it didn't exist, she would create it herself. So from that moment, she decided to start the Black Archive. She would go around to her friends, collect things. When people from the community passed away, she would reach out to get documents, and she started to build the repository that today includes the history of Black Miami from 1896 to present. So through the Black Archives, we have our history part. But then when you talk about the Historic Lyric Theater and the Cultural Arts Complex, we have since reopening in 2014 provided hundreds of jobs to people through the community. And these are people who are right here in Overtown from a lot of the underserved communities that may not have the opportunities to be exposed to the different areas of the theater. People can look forward to more programming, more activities, more opportunities for people to have access to some of the great expressions of Black culture, whether it is through dance, whether it is through theater, music. What we're looking forward to is more and more people encountering this iconic space. Anybody who steps foot into this space, they're enamored by the opulence of the proscenium of the theater, by the detail on the side of the chairs, the beautiful lighting fixtures in the new expanded lobby area. What we're trying to do with this space is to bring it back to the status that it really was. That's really our goal, is to just be that space that has so much activity going on and so much interest that it becomes synonymous with Miami. Miami is a space that is full of people who are passing through. As the community is changing, we want to make sure that everybody who comes to Overtown remembers the people who took a space that nobody really wanted to be in and made it a highly desirable area. If you don't have record of it, you can't prove that it happened. So all these things that were formative in the early years of Miami, the Black judges, Black resistance, Black excellence, these things, if the lion wasn't telling the story, all we would have was a box of Black obituaries. The Historic Lyric Theater is more than a theater. We are an institution. We are a source in this community to remain grounded to history, to remain hopeful for the future, and to provide a space for people to feel a sense of pride when they come here.
And that's the show. A huge thank you to Kamila for taking the time to talk with me and sharing her knowledge. The music you heard in this episode is from Young Musicians Unite's Jazz Collective. You can listen to more of their work and book them at youngmusiciansunite.org/jazz collective. Please make sure to subscribe and like Showed Up on YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook, and reach out with the venue that you think we should feature next. Thanks again for listening, and keep an eye out for our next episode featuring Rain Dogs in Jacksonville, Florida.